All right, well, I think we'll kick things off. So welcome, everyone, to the San Francisco AdTech Meetup. It's pretty fantastic to see such a crowd here, especially after a long weekend. And also thank you very much to Vungle for the sponsor for the evening, for both the amazing offices and the nice spread that's going on out there. So let's jump straight into it. So before we get started, we'll just give you a little bit of background on the group and what we're ultimately trying to do here. So I'm Peter, I'm from Return. This is Deignan here from Pinsight. The three of us teamed up with another gentleman named Kevin Hunt from Spot Exchange probably 6 months ago or so to form this group, which we basically wanted to create as a means for us to get to know different folks in the industry and kind of share some stories and learn things basically from one another. And so I think we're certainly not the only people that feel that way, given the sort of turnout that we've seen. And Ann here just tells me that we've got now 500 members in the group. And I should also mention that it was a group that was started in Denver, in Colorado. And so there is a number of different AdTech Meetup groups that are all sort of within the same umbrella that operate in various places. So there's one in Sydney, which has a couple thousand members, and another one in Denver, obviously, and also London recently too. So it's sort of a growing movement, if you will. And so let me just say again, thanks very much for Vungle for putting on the spread here and giving us access to the office to host the event. So in terms of each month when we try and put these events on, there are a couple of things that always present a few challenges. Speakers being one of them, but certainly sponsors being another one, most definitely. And I'm going to touch on that in just a bit. So for those of you here, the thing that you can do to sort of help us out and for you to be able to get more out of these events in the future is to really kind of grow the group. And the best way to go about doing that is really for you to just kind of tell other people if you feel like you get some sort of value out of the event tonight, or you meet someone that you think is sort of interesting, then the way to kind of help us promote that is just to invite others along. And you should also check out the website that is up here. So this is a website that captures content from actually all the other AdTech meetups that go on in the different cities around the world. And so as you can see, we're recording here tonight. So this video of the two talks that are going to be held here tonight will be posted up here. So it's a pretty good source of knowledge basically on the industry and the various things that are happening. So just to touch on this quickly, again, this is sort of a free thing that we all do, and we really want to be able to grow it because we've found that we've got a good deal of value out of it. And so again, the way that you can help us with that a little bit is to basically talk about it, invite others, share it on social media. And we're always looking for people to present. If you feel like you have something sort of interesting to talk about that's sort of pertinent within the industry or a particular company or technology that is sort of relevant in the ad space, reach out to us. We'd definitely love to have you up here. And the final point there is around sponsorship. So we're always looking for new sponsors. There's a sponsor that ideally can provide a location for us to host these events, as well as chip in a bit of cash for the food and drinks for the evening. And the $1,500 figure is not really hard and fast. It's kind of a rough estimate as to generally what it sort of costs in terms of food or drinks. So similarly, if you sort of know anyone or any of your workplaces think might stand to gain from having this event hosted here, reach out to us and we can take it from there. So before we invite the speakers up, there's a couple of things that we do. So we run through a quick sort of poll of the audience to see if there's anyone out there that's hiring. There's a good chance that there's a few people in the audience today that are looking for roles for which you might be hiring, and I'll ask those people to jump up and say a couple of words about themselves if they like. But to kick things off, so I'll say that Turn, which is the company that I work for, which is a large sort of DSP that has offices here and in Redwood City and New York and Chicago and EMEA and elsewhere, we're hiring for pretty much every sort of position under the sun, engineers, sales, BDs, account management, you name it. So if you're interested or if you're looking for a role that sounds like one of those, do come and talk to me. Is anyone else that wants to kind of give a quick shout out to say the organization is hiring? Yeah, come on up.
I started looking around the talent team here at Vungle. We are hiring across
Any others? All right. And does anyone else want to give a quick shout out for themselves about looking for a position so we can connect the two at the end of the night?
My name is Deignan. I was recently at Ixu as of a couple months ago, did sales and time management over there. So if you guys have anything available, they have to talk.
Nice. And what sort of work are you looking for specifically? What sort of work are you interested in? Android development. Okay, nice. Anyone else? All right. So we also have tentatively scheduled our next meetup event, which is going to be on June 22nd. The location is yet to be locked in, but we already have a couple of speakers committed from both Aerospike and LiveRamp, so it should be good. All right, so the first speaker of the night that I'm going to introduce is Mike Deignan. So he's from Vungle. He runs the programmatic business here at Vungle, and he's going to be giving us basically a snapshot of the programmatic mobile video landscape. Welcome.
Thank you, Peter. How's this sound? Everybody hear me okay? Peter, thank you. You got my name perfect. That was great. For starters, welcome to Vungle, everybody. We definitely appreciate you guys coming out. I think it's really awesome to see so many people here, and like you said, after a long weekend. Also, thank you guys for putting on the event. This is really cool, so we're definitely excited to be a part of it. Thank you, everyone. For starters, show of hands, has anybody ever heard of Vungle before you came in? Pretty good turnout. Okay, cool. For those of you who are not familiar with this, I'll just give you a really quick background. It'll help set the stage for what we'll talk about next, okay? So from the onset, we set out to solve one simple problem. How do we help app developers monetize their content? We found that video at the time was going to be the leading trend in terms of helping with this monetization problem. So we set out, create a little bit of technology, gave that to app developers, and allowed them to deliver video ads within their apps. So we went out, grabbed a whole bunch of publishers, grabbed a whole bunch of advertisers looking to reach an audience, created a marketplace, and started a very traditional mobile video ad network, specialized solely on in-app video. We grew that business primarily on the background of performance-based advertising. Anybody ever seen an ad to download a Clash of Clans or a Candy Crush Saga ad? Probably a million. Maybe a Kate Upton ad. I mean, she's a little bit out there. That's pretty much how mobile marketplace is fueled, right? Everybody's driving click-to-install based advertising. That's fantastic, but we knew that there was a big opportunity for the brand advertisers as well, and that's what we want to talk about today. Basically going after that, I think it's about a $200 billion global TV budget, talking about how it's shifting from TV to desktop to mobile and what it takes to capitalize to get there. Along those lines, what we did was launch an in-app video ad exchange, and just the basics behind it is basically we partner up with demand-side platforms, companies like Turn, TubeMogul, Videology. We make our available to those buyers. The idea was saying, look, okay, people who are buying video are already buying it on desktop. They're maybe dabbling on buying it on mobile. What's the easiest path, right? How are they currently buying it? We didn't want to recreate the wheel. We wanted to make our inventory as accessible as possible. So we partnered up with these buy-side platforms and made our inventory available to them. And so along those lines, I wanted to dive in a little bit and talk to you about two key trends that we're kind of paying a lot of attention to. The first one is the buying behaviors, the patterns that we're seeing, and then also audience-based targeting. All right, good stuff. So two different types of buying patterns here. When you think about an exchange, the one thing that may come to mind is very buzzword, programmatic or real-time bidding, dynamic auctions, all kinds of good stuff, right? And that's very commonplace with a marketplace feed. So in a scenario where we're working with a company like Turn, Vungle is going to have a particular ad impression available. You know, we know it's your device ID is playing Candy Crush Saga and it's about time to show you an ad. We're going to make that available to a buyer who's going to key in on a number of different attributes, stuff like device ID, location, the app that they're in, device make, model, you name it. We're talking about 30 different buying parameters that they get to look at and say, do I want to deliver an ad to this user? If so, what ad would I like to use, right? Do I serve the Coke ad or do I serve the Chevy ad? So that's very much your traditional marketplace, and this is going to be on a non-guaranteed tag. I make a request to 20 different partners. 5 of them returned an ad with a price that they're willing to pay for it. Vungle goes ahead, takes a look at each of those responses, and we go ahead and choose the most appropriate ad to that user. Pretty straightforward stuff, very commonplace. What's really interesting to me is when I first got involved with building out the programmatic side of Vungle, it was like, oh, this is going to be great. You know, we're going to make our inventory available to all these DSPs. Mobile inventory is super hot. It's going to be a piece of cake, right? Not exactly, at least in the early days, but you have to start somewhere, and that's where we first began. What I'm seeing now is a large trend in programmatic direct buys. This is kind of the next level stuff, and it's really interesting. So we're using the same exact programmatic pipes, but giving the DSP or the platform buyers more control over the inventory that they're actually going to be running their ads on. It's really good stuff. So, for example, in the first scenario, I don't know exactly what advertiser is going to be coming through. It could be Coke, it could be GM. However, if we do programmatic direct, you tell me in advance, hey, this call, when you make a bid request to this location, it's always going to return a Nintendo ad or a Geico ad or Nickelodeon. That allows us to do some really creative stuff in terms of publishers, optimize for the creative, basically give that advertiser more detail into the applications and the audience that they're reaching. So it's really 2 important things to pay attention to in the marketplace. The non-guaranteed, guaranteed buying, I think blended together, it makes for a really cool market to look at. The next one I really wanted to key into is audience targeting, and it really bodes well with the first piece. So demographic targeting is really becoming table stakes when you start thinking about buying. In 2014, not too long ago, we could get away with contextual targeting. If you're an advertiser who's coming to advertise to moms, 35 to 45, we could pull together, bundle a segment of applications that looked like they may skew towards that particular audience. In 2015, that's not really flying anymore. Everybody really wants to get granular and know that they're for sure hitting that right audience. So demographic targeting is just the first layer. It's used mostly for planning, and you're using tools like Nielsen Mobile OCR and ComScore. So what we do then is we segment all of our inventory based on the data that gets presented to us, and we help give advertisers suggestions or apps that they can then run their media against to hit that appropriate audience. That's the first level, as I mentioned. The second level, going a bit deeper, is actually cross-device targeting. This stuff's really interesting. Imagine this, right? I think, actually, speaking of Fixu, you guys came out with a report last year, maybe it was earlier this year, something like 70% of all online transactions start on your mobile phone. That's pretty phenomenal stuff. Let me ask you guys, another show of hands. How many people regularly make purchases on their phone? That's less people than knew about Vungle. Wow, okay. All right, so I actually, for one, don't make very many purchases on my phone unless it's Uber, Lyft, Venmo. That's not really purchase, but you get the point. Anyways, the problem is a lot of awareness is happening right on our phones, right? We're seeing ads all day long, but when it comes time for that payoff, we're bumping up screens. We're going to our tablet in the evening, or we're making a purchase from our computer at work. A great point is you're running something for 1-800-Flowers on Mother's Day. You see an ad that reminds you got to buy flowers for mom. Are you going to take the time to do everything in your app? Maybe you don't even have the app. Or you're just going to bump up to your computer. It's going to be a far more seamless purchase, at least at the moment, right? So where I'm going with this, the problem right now is that mobile's not getting its fair share because the attribution isn't being measured, right? And that's the disconnect. Cross-device targeting is going to help solve that. And there's some companies doing some really interesting stuff in this space. You think about cross-device, you have companies like TapAd and Drawbridge, and what they're really trying to do is tie that correlation between a device ID, which we all have in our phone, and that end purchase, which happens based on cookie or browser data, right? So tying the two together. Has everybody heard of cross-device, or is this totally new stuff? Or okay, cool. Right on. So Cross-device actually comes in two flavors too, and this is something, if you go to enough conferences, which I went to 2 last week, a little droning, but anyways, it's going to come in two flavors. You're going to get probabilistic and deterministic. Probabilistic is based on probability, go figure. It's all about kind of black box, looking at a number of different data points and coming together and making a correlation between a device ID and a cookie. Then there's deterministic, and the two key players right now in this space are Facebook and Google. So reason being, they have your email address, they know your browser history, and since they can tie that to the device ID, they're using the email as the hinge. So device ID, email, cookie gives you a holistic view of who the user is, and that allows them to then target against it. They're basically the two powerhouses in the space, and because they have such a quasi-monopoly on the data, most experts are saying that it's going to be a blend of probabilistic and deterministic data that kind of gets us to where we need to go in terms of solving cross-device. I'm good either way. We have a device ID. I make it available to buyers, so whoever solves this problem, I'm super happy, and it'll make all of our inventory all that more valuable, because at the end of the day, we want to help advertisers deliver the highest ROI possible. If they're happy, they're spending, publishers are happy, we're all happy. So that's really the two themes I wanted to talk about today, was buying behavior and then audience targeting. If you guys have any questions now, I'm happy to take them. I don't know the exact format, or if it becomes after, or if you just want to snag me when we're walking around, any of the above. So thank you all very much, though. I appreciate it.
We'll take some questions now. Yeah. Anyone's got some for Mike?
So you just mentioned Facebook and Google as being the two powerhouses when it comes to cross-device IDs or making that link up. There have been concerns that obviously they can grade their own homework. What does Vungle think about that, and sort of are you looking to somebody else besides Facebook and Google to potentially solve this problem?
Great question. So the question was, being the powerhouses, Facebook and Google, they of course can grade their homework because they have the direct access. How does Vungle basically feel about that, I guess, first and foremost? And I do have, I guess, a couple thoughts. First, they do control the access, which does make it at a disadvantage to the rest of the marketplace. There are a number of companies that are trying to break through and break the traditional norm. So imagine this. You're a game developer. You want to capture some sort of user data. So the first thing you're going to do is put a Facebook login to give users access to your app, right? Problem there is you, as the publisher, don't get to actually use that data thereafter, whereas Facebook captures everything. So it's a huge win for them at your content's expense. So a lot of the traditional media players are starting to wise up, and they're saying, shoot, while it's great to use Facebook login, we're not benefiting from any of that data, and it's actually, we're just selling off our user base. So there's companies that are advocating, hey, stop doing that. Use your own email registration system. We can then take all those email addresses and the device IDs and match those up against user graphs online and then enrich your own data. So I think what you are going to see is a trend towards more people kind of wising up to the fact that they're giving their data away for free and they're not able to monetize it. There's got to be a better solution. So I think it's very early days yet, but there are a couple companies that are circling around it. Great question. Yeah. Anything else?
So as telecom carriers, we have already cross-device strategies. Because in the network we provide most of the data provide and they are able to have it try to part out some telecom data to solve this problem.
So that's actually a really good point. I think telco companies have like the biggest advantage going, right? Outside of Facebook, I think telco probably have as much, if not more data. Maybe not so much on demographic, but certainly on buyer behavior. And, of course, Pinsight, owned by Sprint, right? Verizon, you guys all must have seen, bought AOL. They didn't buy AOL for the content. They bought AOL for the access. They're going to layer on all of their data that they now have available to them and sprinkle that all over AOL's ad products, which reach billions of eyeballs, and they're going to enrich every single impression. So you're absolutely right, though. I think that's going to be something. They're basically going to be the new juggernauts battling in the space. And I know there's a whole bunch of PII, privacy-related issues surrounding that. what I think will be really interesting to see is who jumps off the ledge first. So Google's actually a little bit one hand behind the back, where they're not able to fully do the map that a Facebook would. And frankly, they don't want to rock the boat because they make so much money on search. So I think it'll be Facebook that kind of jumps first, sets the trend, and kind of pushes around the FCC to see what they're able to get away with. And then you're going to see the telcos kind of come in behind them, as well as the Googles of the world. So, yeah, great question again. Any other questions? Yeah.
So with respect to demographic targeting, you guys are the impressions that you're seeing a lot more publisher declared attributes?
Publisher to what?
Publisher declared attributes being passed in the impression. Like if the publisher themselves says, well, I know.
Great question. So is Vungle able to capture and then pass publisher declared attributes in a bid request? Answer is we don't collect any demographic data from the pubs. So if we did, it'd be kind of more ad hoc based. Some of our larger publishers, that's something that we've talked to them about and seen about making it available. But short answer, no, it's not something we've done yet. But very interesting, yeah.
How do you guys go about kind of, educating advertisers and your customers about some of the stuff? It seems like publishers are a little bit ahead of it. How many times have you gotten a client who wanted to, I want to target, to use a hyperbolic example, presidents of the United States, and I want to run 3 million impressions over the course of a month. There's very, very little of that inventory left. You've got to kind of educate them. How do you do that?
Yeah, that's a great example. I might have to steal that. Another one that I sometimes use is, like your 28-year-old fisherman on the aisle at a supermarket judging between a Unilever or a P&G product. Can I deliver an ad to that user to get him to sway towards Unilever? No, you absolutely cannot. And for a variety of reasons. One is the proximity is not going to happen. Two, you're limiting your sample pool. There's a bunch of examples, like when you start to go do a Facebook campaign, and every data criteria you layer on, it goes from like 25 million people, 1 million people, 500,000, 50 people. You get that micro targeted in your campaign. It's just A, never going to work, and B, it's not going to be worth anybody's time. But
how do you say what you just said to your customer and still maintain keep a customer though?
Okay. Good question. Yeah, so how do you not call them? Yeah. No, good question. I think maybe one approach would be to address the fact that you like the idea behind it, right? Hey, look, I'm with you. The idea of steering that consumer away from P&G and going Unilever in the moment, damn, that's valuable. But let's just be a little bit more rational about it and talk more about our capabilities. It's just not a possibility. So I think you kind of just quickly steer it, maybe tease a little bit. I mean, it always gets you a little bit. But, yeah, steer it away as quickly as you can and try and go broader, for sure. Especially on mobile. It's early days for all this targeting, guys. So, everything that's out there and talked about, a lot of people, frankly, will go into these meetings and sell the dream that they can reach that fisherman in that aisle. And it really puts the rest of the market at disadvantage. So we've kind of taken a motto from the start where transparency is king. Let's manage and set expectations properly. And that way nobody walks away with mud on their face. At the end of the day, a media buyer has to answer back to the client, right? And the client has to answer back to their VP of marketing, who answers the CEO. So, there's all these layers. You just want to make sure that everybody is happy and feeling good along the way. And, if you do it right and transparent up front, I think that's the best approach.
So speaking of this guy advertiser notions, have you guys dealt with questions about viewability?
Ooh, that is my favorite topic. I love viewability. 50% for a minimum of 2 seconds is the MRC, the Meetings Rating Commission standard. And it's also adopted by YouTube. And so I saw 50% of a video, so half of it, for at least 2 seconds. Well, then why did I pay for a 15-second video slot that I expected the consumer to see the entire thing? It doesn't make any sense to me. If you look in the industry, all the trade blogs, everybody's talking about Group M raising their hands saying, heck no, that's outrageous. We will only want to buy viewable, seen advertising. That should be the mantra that everybody speaks. The problem is in the desktop environment and in some cases mobile web, you just don't have the real estate that you're going to have in an in-app environment like Vungle is. So that's actually one key area that we really, plant our flag and say, look, Vungle is 100% viewable, guaranteed. And we do that because we actually deliver the ads to the native player. So when that particular app actually launches and goes to play ad, it actually makes a call to Vungle's SDK, does a complete handoff. We then take control and we deliver the ad through the native player. In my opinion, if these brand advertisers are going to spend the amount of money they do with a creative agency and then the media on top of it, they deserve to get what they paid for. And that's delivering a good ad to a user. So, good question again. Yeah. Right there.
So you said a lot of the inventory you have basically in the inventory. What about performance? Are you looking into that as well? Or because most of the industry right now is interested in performance, and brand is highly a lot of in brand, but we know that brands are pretty reluctant to do that right now. So what about the performance that is out there and ready to pay and ready to go with video?
Are you talking about performance advertisers driving installs or direct response install based?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So less my expertise, but Vungle's expertise 100%. So again, we built our business based on driving installs. When I first started, that's what I did. I was an account manager working with game studios looking to reach an audience and get an install. We actually took a very different approach in the marketplace. We only charge advertisers on the installs we actually drive, so a cost per install model. And reason being, we took all the risk, but we wanted to ensure that our advertisers were able to get what they paid for and see the return on their investment. If the amount that they actually see in long-term value back from the installs that we drove is higher than the cost that they pay, it becomes an open budget situation. So many of our advertisers say, hey, Vungle, I'm willing to pay this price for CPM in this geo and this geo and this geo. And if we're able to continue to deliver installs at that price, sky's the limit. They just keep spending money. Now, I'm trying to think. So, okay, that's a little bit about the history. In terms of how we do it, that's about 2.5 years in the secret sauce. But really what we got great at was user experience and basically optimizing towards user behavior and delivering the right ad at the right time. So we're looking at a whole bunch of different user attributes to hopefully deliver them an ad that they haven't seen before, something that's going to gauge their interest and hopefully lead to an install. And if it does, it's a win for everyone. So, cool? All right, awesome. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it.
All right, so we've got one more speaker for the evening. Dinesh Palachande is a colleague of mine at Turn. He is a product consultant there and certainly one of the go-to guys for many of our top clients, a lot of folks around the office. So he's going to be giving us some insight in terms of user-level optimizations and how the industry is moving there. Dinesh.
Hey guys, happy to be here. So today I'm going to talk about user-level optimizations and just basically the trends that I'm seeing today in our space in terms of how brands, agencies are getting more sophisticated with their data, and how that's leading to better optimization at a user level, moving away from segments actually. So today, just to give you how our industry is set up in terms of segmentation, when we actually target users out there, agencies, brands, data providers, we've assigned thousands, if not millions, of attributes or categories to a user. Could be a male under 30 making $100,000 a year, sports enthusiast, whatever that is. And based on those attributes, we've actually built rules around them to build segments and then target those users. Typically, that's the landscape that we've seen across DSPs, DMPs, when we bring on data onto our platform, and when we also use that for targeting. An additional layer that we see on top of this data is frequency or recency, just to make this data more actionable or more effective and efficient. And typically, those are the things that we optimize towards. Clicks, conversions, like you mentioned, viewability. Things like that are what we're actually today going and optimizing towards our campaigns. But what's after this? We've seen this trend for the last 5 years or 7 years in this space, but what comes after this. So I think brands today, with the amount of data that they have, are starting to actually realize the true potential. They're trying to use models that are typically seen in the CRM space, regression models, PMML. I know I'm pretty sure a few of you guys must have heard about PMML already, but a lot of these models about text models, regression models are now starting to creep up in our space as well. And using those models and attributes such as past behavior, combination of attributes, devices, all those attributes or all that data together, they're trying to put that together, piece that together, and use that to better define segments out there. So how are we going to, what are the applications that we are seeing today in this space with all this data that people are capturing, all the brands that are capturing? So I think today, more than just defining segments, brands are now able to define alignment of a specific user to a segment. So think about it this way. I am somebody who shops on eBay a lot. And I may be more likely, because I'm a sports enthusiast, maybe a more likely user to buy some sports shoes on eBay, but less likely to buy, let's say, a fashion product, or let's say a mobile phone. So I'm still going to be part of both those segments, but my likelihood to buy a sports shoe will be much higher than buying a cell phone. So when I'm actually getting this data or pushing this data onto a lot of DMPs or media execution platforms, I want to send this alignment of segment or alignment to a certain attribute along with that, so that eventually when the DSP or the media execution platform is making a decision on to bid higher or lower, they can use this alignment to do that. So eventually campaigns can now be optimized towards actually how much is the alignment. So if I am somebody who's a sports enthusiast, I want the bidder to actually bid much, much higher than on a campaign which is for shoes, versus somebody who is, if I'm not going to buy a mobile phone, I want to reduce my bid to something which is minimal because I know I'm not actually going to buy that phone. So like I said, think retail. I mean, a lot of brands like Amazon, eBay are looking in that direction, where they're trying to bring in scores associated with segments for each user and making it much, much more granular and doing user level optimization and just not segment level optimization. And I think the last thing that I wanted to talk about was just what the future is. So we've already come to a point where for so many years we've been looking at how we're optimizing towards segments, how we're optimizing towards clicks, conversions, viewability today. And if the next step is actually looking at user level optimization, what's the road ahead? So I think Mike touched about cross-device a bit, and I think that's what the future is as well, because brands, agencies know that users have multiple devices, but another piece of information that they have is, I know time of day when I'm on a certain device. When I wake up in the morning, I consume my data on tablets. When I'm at work, I'm actually using my laptop most often. And when I go back home, I'm usually on my cell phone, in-app playing a game or something, or when I'm traveling or commuting between my job, I'm actually using my phone a lot. So if a brand knows that kind of information, they can actually build a sequential message and actually piece all that things together and use even that information to optimize my brand campaign. So think about this way: when I'm in the middle of the day and I'm on my work computer, I want to show an ad which tells me about message A about a product. When I'm traveling back home at a certain time when I'm using my phone, I want to show another ad which has message B about the same product, and build that and piece that whole campaign together eventually and give a holistic view of the product. Because as you all have heard, I mean, a campaign is all about making the brand the hero. That's what this will help you. So eventually capturing the time of day, user level optimization, all those things put together and actually make optimizations the future. So I think that was just the one thing I want to talk about. Any questions? You're right, and they are, and all DSPs do it, but the data is limited to a campaign. When you look at regression modeling or any sort of models that are applied in DSPs today, their scope is limited to the campaign that it's running. So if you ever see how campaigns run, the initial phase is when it's called the learning phase, because they're learning about what users are clicking on, the attributes that are being passed from in the bid request, and based on those, what users are actually converting or clicking, and those learnings are being used in the future. But this is about talking before the campaign is even started, because brands actually have so much of their CRM data that they're actually looking to think about it that let's say I am a male and I am a sports enthusiast. Maybe I'm somebody who's likely to buy beer. That's the kind of information that comes before I even start running a campaign. And it's not actually, no one knows about that. But basically building 2 or 3 variables and combining that information together and piecing that information together, I can actually predict what other attributes can be assigned to a user. So the regression modeling or all the other models that you spoke that are happening today in DSPs, but it's only at the campaign level. It's not at a user level. Absolutely. Most often, because we still don't have, I wouldn't say you have these global variables assigned to users. If you look at it, if you think about it from a language perspective or a programming perspective, you don't have these global variables that you can assign to users. DSPs don't have that because it you don't know that about a user, because if a DSP doesn't have PII information, they can't tie those things together. So if you're just looking at an instance of a cookie or a device ID, you don't have that piece of information. So this level of information, usually brands who have the abundance of CRM data that they have can unlock and are starting to unlock basically, and push that as well into the media execution platform so that bids can be optimized based on that.
The question here is the amount of bid time. So I understand you're creating user level optimization here and adding more attributes and adding more scores and things like that. But at the same time, the bid winning and transaction is just microseconds.
Absolutely, 100 milliseconds.
Yeah. How do you actually optimize that? Because on one side you have scores created, on the other hand you have to make that bid within that bid.
Exactly. So that's a challenge that's coming up, and these that's why these PML models are coming up, where those are now becoming part of the bidding algorithm itself. So these scores are now eventually getting tied into just like today when a bid request comes, you evaluate a user segment, the ads, whatever those eventual variables are, to decide if you want to bid or not. This score or this alignment with that segment is also now chosen as a vector in this formula. So you can basically, it becomes that model, becomes your bidding algorithm. So people try and use that. I know there was a suggestion that was thrown in by one of my customers as well, which said that, can you call in real time my system and pull that score out for the specific user? And I'm like, that's the problem right there, because I only have 100 milliseconds to send back a bid response. And at that time, it's not possible for me to actually call another system, get that score, and then improve or decrease my bid. But if you include that in the bidding model itself, you can do that. So a lot of examples that people today are using it effectively is just not alignment with segments, but also frequency in terms of how many impressions have already been shown to such a user or not. In terms of just, I think even optimizing towards all the variables or attributes that come in through a bid request, like location, you can optimize towards those as well. So some use cases like that. Any other questions?
So you took first-party data at the moment. Do you do it from any third-party data vendors, whether they're considered like percentage users in segment?
I think third-party vendors are starting to do that. Actually, Turn's actually having a conversation with a few of them. But in my experience, mostly it's been first-party vendors, first-party brands who actually have that first-party data, who actually are using a lot of these business models themselves that they're using in their own CRM space and unlocking that potential that they have in their own data. But I think it's very, very nascent right now. I think third-party vendors are now starting to see the strength in this as well. All right.
Thanks. All right, that's all we have for tonight. So just before we wrap up, thanks again to Vungle. Very much appreciate the space and the sponsorship funds. Feel free to hang around for a little bit. I think there's a couple of drinks out there still to be drunk. All right, thanks.